when we can be there for ourselves in the way that is not just, oh, I'm only going to be there for myself when I'm doing everything right. Like I'm going to be
Mhm.
there for myself regardless of where I'm at. Then you can really start to make that shift away from that chronic self criticism that so many moms experience.
Welcome to the Worthy Mother podcast, where we discuss all things identity, self-compassion, and fulfillment within and beyond motherhood. I'm Emily Rose Hardy, a mindset and self-love coach for moms. I am a firm believer that to be able to take care of our children, we must take care of ourselves first. This is not a parenting podcast. No, this is a podcast where we will challenge the societal expectations of what it means to be a mom, demystify the perfect mom myth, and learn to love ourselves. You are worthy, mama. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the Worthy Mother podcast. I am so happy that you are here tuning in, and we have a really fantastic conversation headed your way right now. Today we are joined by Amanda Della Madriz, who is a certified life and mindset coach who focuses on teaching mothers how to love their mom lives so that they can drop the guilt and feel better, which you know I am all about. Working as a career coach since 2013, Amanda decided to dedicate herself solely to raising her children in 2016. And after experiencing the trials of pandemic parent life as a stay-at-home mom, she realized the desire to help other parents beat the burnout in their lives. Most recently certified through the Life Coach School, she has also now added thought work to her toolset in order to help clients shift their mindset as well as achieve their goals. Her passion is entrenched in providing a fun and supportive space for her clients to unpack their brains and see what's really going on so that they're able to make lasting changes in their lives. And I am so excited to have what I feel is going to be a super aligned conversation. We both really value similar concepts and conversations in our work. So I'm so happy that you are here, Amanda. Could you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, what you do, all that good stuff?
I mean, you covered a lot of it, but sure. I am first and foremost a wife and a mother. My kids are 4 and 7. And I was super into the stay-at-home mom life. Like I had dedicated myself to that fully. And after and during COVID, I just fell into this place of not enjoying my mom life. Like things were really hard. I was burnt out. I was honestly kind of miserable and decided that it was time for me to sort of find myself again and do something for myself again. And when I went back to my career in coaching as that outlet, right, I had found myself in this place of solving so many of my own issues in motherhood through coaching in a way that I wanted to be able to share with others. And that's where I sort of niched down to moms and been like, okay, this is my story. This is my journey. I want to be able to help others the same way that just coaching myself as a coach has really just helped me in my own mom life. And now I am focused on helping make motherhood easier for moms, which I think is so important. And it really comes down to creating awareness around our thoughts and perspectives so that we can feel better because everybody just wants to feel better.
Yes, I'm snapping right along with you. It is, I think so much of motherhood and what can make it so complicated is almost this like badge of honor we feel like we get when it's hard. And I love that you focus on kind of bringing that ease into it and knowing that like it doesn't have to be hard. I just a little aside, my word for 2013, I set an intention with a word of the year and it was ease because I think that is something that I am trying to bring into my life more. And it's not easy to do. Ironically, it's not easy to do that because there are so many contributing factors that can make it so complex and complicated and make it feel like that's the way it should be. So I just appreciate that is such a focus of your work, and it's an important one, and normalizing that.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny that you mentioned that because I literally did a video today talking about how nice it is when things are easy, but also things are 50-50. So easy and hard is kind of both okay. And it really comes down to like understanding like what we're thinking about things can make it harder for ourselves too. And when we
Hmm.
can have that awareness and that sort of like self-compassion, we can get through things a little bit better.
You are speaking my language right now.
I love it.
So, one of my favorite things to talk about is mom guilt. It is really fascinating to me to kind of explore how societal norms and pressures really impact us on a deep level. And I truly believe that the more that we expose mom guilt and why it occurs and talk about it, the more we can all just work through it and live kind of more freely from those pressures that we feel. So I know that you also in your work talk about mom guilt. And I cannot pass up the opportunity to just get into that conversation with you. It's just the perfect the perfect time for it. So, what is your perspective on where mom guilt kind of stems from?
Yes, it is a big cornerstone of my work. And it's a big
Yeah.
part of like what my experience was in
Yeah.
motherhood up until a few years ago. And I have found that it is a combo.
Yeah.
There is this part of our brain that just tries to keep us safe. And as part of that, is constantly looking for all of the danger and will just naturally gear towards the negative. And that in parenthood really results in just assuming that we're bad parents. That's just the natural place we tend to go to. And it's so normal. So many people just automatically just go there and believe that they're bad moms. And it tends to have different flavors. Like for me, it oddly was, oh, I want to be a good mom. It wasn't the obvious, oh, I'm a bad mom. It was, oh, I want to be a good mom. And that really stemmed from that fear of like, well, because I don't want to be
Yeah.
a bad mom. And I really started to question, like, why do we just go there? Why is that the normal place? Because it's not true. Just because it's normal doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Where is it written that we're supposed to just believe that we're bad parents, that we're operating from this place? And I dug into that a little further and I realized that that piece can come from this societal belief of, well, if it's hard, then I must be failing. And that's another piece of like, well, but that's not necessarily true. We just have been taught to believe, well, if it's easy, that means that I'm doing well and succeeding. And if it's hard, then clearly I'm failing. But parenthood is hard and it's important work. And so we don't want to fail. And when we can release that piece of, well, hard doesn't mean that I'm failing, hard is just the way this is because it's important work and I care about my children. Understanding that I care and I love my children then automatically just makes me a good parent. Like innately, when we can separate that belief of hard means I'm failing and I don't have to believe that I'm a bad parent, I can innately believe that I'm a good parent, then we can really start to work through mom guilt as potentially an experience in our parenthood, but not so much part of our identity, right? Something
Hmm.
that weighs on us day in and day out. And understanding those two pieces for me has really led me to want to show people like, you can believe that you're a good parent. Like, did you know that that was even available to you? You're just believing the story that your brain is feeding you and looking for all the evidence on how you're a bad parent. But you can
Yeah.
retrain your brain to see all the evidence on how you're a good parent and cement that in a different way for yourself. And people don't even realize it's an option. It's so fun to show them.
Yeah, that is really, I love what you said there about your own experience, not even necessarily driving in the I'm a bad mom, but this I want to be a good mom. And I think that's something in my own work, just exploring how we can talk about growth, we can talk about improving ourselves. And when it comes to parenting, oftentimes, like that is the kind of pattern that is presented to us of like becoming a better parent, finding
Right.
ways to be better for your kids, which, you know, there's value in that and there's a space for that. But oftentimes, I think we feel like we have to constantly be striving towards this better version of ourselves in motherhood. And again, there's value in that. There are things that we want to improve on. There's things that it's like, you know what, that felt really crummy. And I don't want that to be the way that I'm parenting
Right.
my child or showing up for them. But on the same, you know, the other side of the coin, it's like we can be enough, we can be good enough. And it doesn't always have to be this, oh, I need to be better, because that can lead to the same feelings of I'm bad. And it
Yes.
it can have the same impact. So I really love that. And I haven't really heard that stated in that explicit way. So that's an interesting way. I'm going to kind of ponder on how you said that for a while.
Yeah, that has been my journey too. That
Mm-hmm.
idea of like, well, especially like, self-help, I need to get better. I know that
Yeah.
there's that opportunity. And then it started to go down that exact path of like, well, then that means that something's wrong with the way I currently
Mm-hmm.
am. And that is really led me personally on this journey of like self-acceptance and self-trust, even because I think when we go back to thinking about how difficult parenthood is, we don't give ourselves the grace to understand like we've never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Even between one and two kids, they're different human
Yeah.
beings, right? And I think that that is so important to talk about too. Like it's when we think about that piece of hard and how important this work is, that you immediately go to that other place of like, well, I can't trust myself to do well. So something's wrong with me. So I have to be better. So I have to do this better. So I have to work on that. And that just creates so much pressure.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. And it's like the normalizing the not knowing exactly what we're doing, normalizing that and being like, well, yeah, of course you don't know what you're doing. You've never done it before. And the people that you've seen do it have never done it before. Like it's really our children have never existed and they've never
Yeah.
existed at the age they are before. Like it's all constantly new, and in no other realm of our lives do we put so much pressure on us to know exactly what we're doing for something we've never done before with people who've never existed before. But like when it comes
Right.
to being a mother, it's like we have to be perfect and we have to be showing up for these people exactly the way they individually need us to show up, and they better be acting perfect too. Like if we're perfect, our kids will be perfect, and it's like that's not how
Mm.
this works. That's not how this all works. And so like just normalizing the fact that this is a unique situation you're in. You are learning as you go, and you will continue to learn as you go, and you can accept that you are enough exactly where you are as you go through that journey.
Right. And understanding like there's no bar. The only
Mm-hmm.
bar is you love and care about your children, which everybody does. Like everything else is just a story, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a different story. So the real only like threshold to being good parents, like, do you love your children? Okay, great. You're a good parent
Yeah.
then. That's it.
Absolutely. I love that. So, something I really want to get into in this episode with you is talking about self criticism and motherhood, because that's a huge piece of the experience oftentimes. And I want to get into what that can really look like. But before we do, I would love to just ask you how self criticism does actually impact our experience as mothers.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, like I was saying before, it adds so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're living with constant pressure, self imposed pressure, it ends up leading to other feelings of annoyance or shame or hate, even like that sort of like dull hate that kind of like sits there. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like a rage hate, but it's there for us. And it's exhausting. And from that place of exhaustion, like you see how the pattern goes, that place of exhaustion leads to burnout, leads to why we,
Yeah.
zone out on our phones. It ends up leading to that like being overwhelmed constantly, easily overwhelmed. And it's that base feeling that I think we sort of see all of the other ones and don't understand that what's kind of creating it is that sense of pressure that we're putting on
Mm-hmm.
ourselves all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's so many like effects of the effects. And it can
Yes.
really, you can see how it could cycle too of like, well, look at me just sitting here on my phone scrolling. And it's like, well, that could be a result of the pressures you're putting on yourself. But now you're putting pressures on yourself because you're feeling bad about it, and
Right.
on and on and on and on. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a strange form of it because I feel like hate is like such a strong word, but it feels, I wish there was like a downgrade. Like there was like a word that was like right underneath that didn't feel so strong as hate, but there
Yeah.
there is that sort of just like being hard on yourself constantly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just live with that and they don't understand that that's even what they're feeling. And it does. It's
Yeah.
like a domino effect that leads to all of this other stuff. And then it adds on more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for people to understand, like going back to that self trust, like that's how you combat that. Like you really have to start to peel back those layers and understand that you're doing the best that you can and the way that you are is okay, and recognize when those emotions of pressure and being hard on yourself come up, that that's what's really going on.
Yeah. You said something in there about how sometimes we don't even realize what's happening. And I know that when we talk about self-criticism, there's like the more obvious, like telling yourself you're a bad parent and like telling yourself you're a bad mom, telling yourself you're not doing enough, like those kind of more obvious thoughts that,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes a lot of us do have those kind of self-criticism thoughts.
Right.
But I know that sometimes it's not so evident, it's not so obvious, but it can still be damaging, that self-criticism. So I'm wondering, like, what are some thoughts that moms might have that are still self-criticism that they may not even realize are thoughts of self-criticism?
Yeah, such a good question. And I think us moms who we have this sort of selfless consciousness that we
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, oh, I need to do better, right? Or, like that sort of like, I need to hit this goal. Like, I know what the goal is and I'm not there. And I think that's a really common form of self criticism that's not as rough on our. Our well-being as, oh, I'm a terrible mom, because that exists a lot, and people again
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that they're telling themselves that all day. But the sort of less obvious, like, oh, I need to do better, I wasn't present today, I didn't do this, like recognizing the faults that you're hoping in an effort will make you better aren't making you better. They're just making you feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really important to understand too, because these thoughts can be tricky sometimes. And I love going back to understanding what self criticism actually feels like for you. Because in this work, it's really hard to create awareness around what you're thinking because we're having so many thoughts over the course of the day. I like to have everybody, all of my clients, gear back to like connecting back to that feeling, because that's a physical experience that sometimes it's easier to recognize than whatever's going on in your brain. And when you can say, okay, like self criticism for me feels like pressure, feels like shame, feels like a frustration, then you can start to track back to like, oh, what are the thoughts that I'm thinking in that? Oh, like here's shame again. What am I thinking right now? Oh, I'm thinking, was a really good, tricky thought that I feel like a lot of us moms have is, I have to do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not necessarily a obvious self-criticism thought. It can just kind of come in there and be like, oh, I have to do this right now. And if you take a look at something like that and noticing that it doesn't feel good when you think, oh, I have to do this right now, you can dig a little deeper and understand like, oh, well, that's coming from this weird belief that I don't think I'm going to get to those dishes. And it's like, why do I not trust myself enough to get to those dishes? So I have to do it right now. Otherwise, I won't ever do them, which I would make mean that I'm a terrible mom. And our brain goes through that in a split second and we don't track it.
Yeah.
And other thoughts that I have found in my own experience, I love sharing with people, which helps illustrate why connecting to the feeling is so important, is like, when you stub your toe at the edge of the bed and you're like, ah, oh, come on. Like, you're not being mad at the bed. You're mad at yourself for being so stupid for stubbing your toe on the bed. And that's not necessarily even like a motherhood or a parenthood self criticism, but it still affects how you show up as a mother, as a parent. And things like that can really add up over the course of your day. Even something like, I'm late, not necessarily an obvious self criticism, not necessarily a super obvious like mother self criticism. But if you're trying to get your kids to school and you think, oh, we're late, you can see how that's going to end up resulting in you making mistakes. I certainly don't know what to pick when I think I'm late to
Mm-hmm.
wear, right? Like, you're going to rush everybody. Everyone's going to be more upset. You're going to be more frustrated. It's going to be harder to get everybody out of the house. And you'll essentially make yourself late by believing that you're going to be late, right? Or that sort of thought that comes in when you doubt whether or not you should make a left turn or a right turn to avoid the traffic on the street because you're like, oh, I'm late. And all of those things can end up resulting in creating an experience for you in motherhood that self-criticism can seep into everything, and you don't even realize that that's what's happening. And so the feelings for me is like where I immediately go to, like, start with the feelings first, and then you can track all these crazy thoughts that you don't even realize are self-criticism because it could really be different for everybody.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that it can build on itself, and it's not so much even the like how big those thoughts are. It's the like you say you can't decide which way to turn, and it's like, well, yeah, because you're like again, it's you're in a specific situation you've never been in. There's not a right answer, but like having just that little tiny moment of why can't I figure this out? And
Mhm.
constantly having those types of self-criticisms that seem so minor
Right.
can just build to this complete lack of self-trust. That's something that I find really fascinating to look at, is how we have kind of been conditioned not to trust ourselves. And I think this brings up such a good point about how that self-talk can really force us away from self-trust and the connection there. It's really interesting. I would love to know if there's anything specifically, because you've brought self-trust up a few times, and if there's anything specifically that we want to get into with self-trust, kind of why that self-trust lacks for so many of us, and what we can do about that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I wish I could solve
Right.
that. Yeah. I think that especially nowadays with being so connected to information and each other,
Mhm.
especially with stuff like social media, you think like you can't trust yourself because there's, WebMD. There is
Mhm.
that mom that has all of those perfect photos on Instagram. Like you're exposed to so much other information that it works against you believing your inner knowing with a lot of
Mhm.
things in parenthood. And maybe you don't. Maybe you still mess it up. Maybe you still make mistakes. But that core part of trusting yourself is something that we operate from without realizing that that's what's happening. And I think that that's sort of the biggest piece to uncover us as mothers is to build that self-trust again by understanding where it's not where it's lacking, but like this idea of self-criticism and how it's not only in relation to specific experience in motherhood, but us as human beings,
Mhm.
us as women, and understanding that we can consciously, I say it to myself all the time now, I'm like, I can trust myself. Like, you have to actually consciously build that in your own belief system in order to break free from all of this other stuff that's happening. And it's crazy because you're like, well, of course I trust myself. And it's like, yeah, but do you work on that belief? Like if you're not feeling good and you're understanding that that's coming from this place of pressure and believing that you're a bad parent, then you have to start working on that self-confidence and that trust and that compassion. The compassion is such a big piece of it too. And self-compassion for me was something specifically that as an emotion was so new that I was like,
Yeah.
this is so weird to feel. Like what is this?
Yeah.
But having those moments of awareness where you can see like, oh, this is coming up again, and that's fine that it came up. Let me bring up some self-compassion and understand that I can believe that I can trust myself here. Then you can start to really work on reversing the self-criticism that leads to so little trust in ourselves. And I do think that that's part of where it comes from nowadays is like there's so much information out there that you of course are going to be like, but I can't trust myself. Look at all of this other stuff that looks more real and more true
Mhm.
and backed by science or backed by this, or you can see it visually versus just you existing in your head too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think the feeling like if we trust ourselves, we should get it right. And if we don't know the answer, feeling like, well, then I can't trust myself because I may not get this right. And that's not really exactly what's going on, what's important. I'm thinking about just something that I experienced that for me, because I was trusting myself in the moment, it didn't really bother me too much. But back in December, my son got a really high fever. He woke up with like 106-degree fever, which, with who knows if the thermometer was perfectly on it. But he'd been okay, but then it was like we could control the fever down to like 103 with medicine, but he still had a high fever. And so we made the decision to take him to the ER, which, is like a scary decision of like, am I overreacting? But then it's like, well, no, if they have a really high fever, that's what you're supposed to do. And so we got there, they're making sure he's getting enough oxygen because he had this cough. And so they put the oxygen monitor on. He was doing pretty good. We ended up getting the fever down a little bit. And someone made a comment to me there of like, oh, if it's just a high fever, you don't have to, like, we usually don't worry about that. And I'm like, well, all this information I've got says if they have 105-degree fever, that's where I don't have to do the work to like decide. That just means it's bad enough to go in. And I trusted myself in that decision, whether he was okay or not in that moment. It was like, this is the time we're going to take him in. And just how that one little comment from someone, a medical practitioner, how to me it was a little bit like, that was kind of a weird thing to say to me because I made the decision to do this. But how if you're not trusting yourself in something like that, and then you feel the shame of like, oh my God, was I overreacting?
Right.
And then next time it happens,
now you're going to be like, what do I do here?
You have that doubt. And just that's one example, but those things, little things like that can happen regularly where it's like, oh my God, I should have known. And it's like, well, you should have known what was the right answer there? What if his oxygen levels were low?
Right.
Like I don't have an oxygen monitor. I couldn't tell. Just all of it. It's like, I know that was the right decision to make. And thank goodness he was okay. But just in so many situations, we don't know what the right decision is. So we have to make the best decision. And any little outside or internal comment about, well, that wasn't the right decision. It's like, well, I couldn't have known that. And that's okay. And I need to have grace with myself and compassion with myself because I literally could not have known what the right decision was because there probably was no right decision.
Right. Like in that moment, there's nothing else that you could have done. And I think it's so important to understand that piece. Like you can still trust yourself and potentially be wrong. And it doesn't mean anything about you or your experience or your validity. Oh my gosh, as a parent, right? Like you making mistakes or you trusting yourself and being wrong doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. You're still a good parent. It's just, it really goes back to this idea of you're in charge of your experience. It's still your life. Like, wouldn't you rather operate from a place of self-trust than judgment? Like you could see what those two places, like what the results of operating from each of those places is going to be in your life. Wouldn't you choose self-trust and self-compassion over that judgment?
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of, I think about how many of us grew up with kind of that self-judgment as the star of the show, I would say. Like that's,
oh my gosh, yes.
It's just kind of a thing. And I'm wondering if like there's anything there that you want to speak of just how that conditioning happens, how that kind of like tendency towards a lack of self-trust and towards self-judgment kind of comes about and why that is so hard for us as women, as moms, based on our personal histories.
Right? I mean, we could do a whole different podcast on just
right. Write a book on it.
It does. It really is hard I think that's why so many of us operate from this place of perfectionism, right? And it's like that, I don't know how it happens. I'm sure it's different from everybody, but as soon as you were like, oh, that idea of being the star of the show, I was like, that was me.
Yeah.
That was exactly how I operated for so long. And I think what happens there is you end up getting so much external feedback that you don't learn to listen to yourself. And so you fall into just a pattern. It's just a habit of judging how you're doing by what everybody else is saying. Or how everybody else is not judging you, but that feedback that you're getting. And I think that that's kind of the biggest piece that for me is been really life-changing lately, is to understand, like, I don't need to listen to anybody. I can just listen to myself. But us as moms are not used to that either, because we're so disconnected from our being, like our identity as a human, because we have been so devoted to this mom role for so long. And I think that's kind of the core of what our work now in this generation is to do, is to really find that balance between operating from the place that we can trust that we're good mothers and like connecting to ourselves in a really authentic way to support that trust. And whatever
Yeah,
that looks like. It doesn't matter. There's, again, no bar for that either. There's no right way to do that. But we're so disconnected from ourselves that we just don't trust ourselves. And it's kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful way to think about it too, because I think that is a pretty generally accepted kind of truth that for moms, there tends to be kind of a shaking of your identity. And so exploring how that, whether that's just something that innately happens or is because of societal factors. And I think it's a little bit of both,
Everything,
right?
right? Yeah.
But exploring how that connects to the self-trust and how it's really hard to operate from a place of trusting yourself when, like, what is yourself? Like, who are you? What is the
Who
sense
are
of
you?
self? Yeah.
Right.
What do you believe? What do you value? What do you think?
Right. A really powerful question that I've been asking myself lately it's so simple. It's like, what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be for anything, but it helps me
Yeah.
connect back to that like inner self of like, what do I want to do right now versus like falling into the have tos and what do the kids want and what's going on here? What am I expected to do? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what do I want to do? Do I want to sit here at my kitchen table? Do I want to go sit with my kids and watch TV? Do I want to have everybody go to the park? Do I want to have a snack? But just like connecting to yourself in such a simple way that so many moms are out of touch with. And it's such a simple question, but it helps build that habit of connecting back to yourself in a powerful and small way, like simple way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering with self-criticism, if there's any like tips you kind of touched on right there, like the checking in with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
asking yourself, what do I want? But do you have any other tips for kind of moving past that self-criticism, even like in its sneakiest of forms?
Yeah, it really is all about watching yourself to understand what's the emotion that self criticism
Yeah.
looks like for you. And when you can identify that, then doing the work to see what those thoughts are, because it's not going to be just one, they can be totally sneaky, but creating that awareness based on how you're feeling. Like self
Yeah.
criticism for me feels like this. Okay, now for the next week, I'm going to watch when I feel like that. And every time I'm just going to observe what is happening and write down
Mm-hmm.
the thoughts that I'm having. And then that combo of awareness with that self trust and compassion, because you can choose. You can
Yeah.
have that moment of, oh, I just realized I had this thought that I'm a bad mom. Okay, Amanda, like there it is again. It's okay that you had that thought, but you are a good mom. Let's think about that instead. Or, it's okay that you're having this moment right now. Let's be there for ourselves. And when we can be there for ourselves in the way that is not just, oh, I'm only going to be there for myself when I'm doing everything right. Like I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
there for myself regardless of where I'm at, then you can really start to make that shift away from that chronic self criticism that so many moms experience.
I love that idea of being there for yourself, even not in those moments that are your proudest. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's really important to talk about. That there's times where you will do things that you're like, damn, I wish I didn't do that. Like I know snapping at our kids, that's like a pretty standard example, but where it's like you have a reaction towards your kid because you were dysregulated and you have this reaction that you don't like. And I think there's such an important piece right there about having compassion. And you can even think, like, instead of thinking I'm a bad mom, changing that thought to be like, wow, I'm not being taken care of in this way. And like, that was not the reaction that I wanted to have. And how can I support myself
Right now.
to be in a better place so that that's not, and knowing that it doesn't have to be like, it's fine that I just yelled at my kid. That doesn't have to be the way that you're compassionate with yourself. It can be this place of like, I think I need more support.
Right. Curiosity.
And yeah, it's so powerful. And it's like, how can we step into that role with ourselves to have compassion? Because we all have things that we're human. We'll just say that we're human.
Right.
We all have things where it's like, that's not really how I want to show up. And so it's like, it's okay not to be stoked on every part of yourself and stoked on exactly how you showed up in every moment, but just knowing that compassion doesn't have to come from a place of like complacency. There can be change desired and you can still have compassion.
Absolutely. And I will say the other end of the spectrum there is just the warning of like, don't let that be an excuse for you to also be hard on yourself, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Like,
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh, I can be here for myself right now. Oh wait, I'm not being here for myself right now. I'm such a bad person because I can't be
Yeah.
here for myself right now.
Got it. It's like the layers of giving yourself grace.
Yes, 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 yes. Because our brains are
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is such a good point. And that's something I find that comes up a lot in conversations about mom guilt. And then it's like, wait, so I could just change the way I'm thinking and not have these feelings and show up better? It's like, well, then I'm a bad person for not being able to just do that. And it's like, you can continue the
Yes.
cycle of like, well, if I could be more compassionate, why am I not? And it's like, well, there's a lot of factors to it. And so we have to like be compassionate with us not being self-compassionate. Like there's a lot to it.
To it, and it is never going to be done. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is not like a point where you're like, I am officially self-compassionate and I trust myself fully and I don't have to do this work anymore. So that's
Yeah.
understanding too, like it is always going to be a work in progress because you are
Yeah,
a human having a human experience, right?
absolutely. Yeah. So that is so important to just have that plug in the conversation because it really is, we don't ever want to be like feeling like that's the reason we're not good enough is because we're not being kind enough to ourselves or whatever it is. Like we don't need more pressure. We don't need more reasons to criticize ourselves.
For sure. Yeah. I'm wondering now if I'm thinking about it, if like that idea of self-hate, like one layer underneath that is really just criticism. Like self-criticism
Yeah.
just feels like a mild, less angry version of hate. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's the
Well, and I think I like that you use the word hate though, because I think normalizing that feeling of hatred that we get to ourselves is an important piece of it because sometimes, yeah, it's like it's not hate where it's like necessarily this deep hatred, but I think it is a similar
right.
feeling. And I think it's important to talk about because that can be shameful, right? Like
Yes.
it's like I hate myself. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be that deep for it to feel that painful and that
So good.
have that impact, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, it's like a dull hate, right? It's not like
Yeah.
that like super
Yeah.
deep, angry, emotional hate. It's like a very dull, but really damaging version of that I
Yeah.
think people don't even like you don't realize that that's what's going on for you.
That's sparking something like just I'm curious. I want to explore that a little more, just in general, because that's really an interesting concept. And I'm sure there's researchers out there who've done work on that. And so I'm gonna have to keep my eyes open for that. I love when there's conversations that just spark something new. It's like I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I'm curious to go down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Love it.
So, I mean, we are right in line with this, but I am wondering just what you see as the value of this kind of quote, real talk, this kind of conversations that we're having right now, and the conversations you have with the moms you work with.
Yeah.
When it comes to that motherhood experience, why is this real talk so valuable?
That's why. I mean, we covered it. Like it is
Yeah.
all about having that self-compassion and having your own back no matter where you're at. That's why it's important. Like this real talk just helps ground us all back to there is no bar, there is no perfect. You can just be yourself and accept where you're at. Good days, bad days, mistakes, successes. It's all okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think that that's really where the idea of real talk it's really valuable if it helps you get to that place of how I am is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a huge reason behind this podcast is like having the conversations, just having the space for the conversations and saying, okay, this is okay.
Yeah.
This is, even if it's not, quote, normal, like just talking about things and normalizing all experiences and all feelings and not having that self-blame for any
For
of our
sure.
experiences. And when we
Yeah.
can talk about it, it just puts it out on the table.
For sure. Because you think that it's only you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you make up
Yeah.
this huge story about like how that you're just messed up because you're the only one dealing with this. But
Yeah.
I love it because even the intro of your podcast, I'm like, Yes, Emily, let's go. Let's talk.
I'm glad you get that feeling, because
Do.
I mean, that is so how I feel about it all. It's like, let's just talk. I feel like I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but I was like a little kid that talked a lot. Like, I talked early and I didn't stop. I just talked and talked and talked. My parents joke about it a lot. I mean, they still joke about it. I get with my parents and they're like, are you going to shut up anytime soon? But I just love talking. And there was a large period of my life from like middle school into high school where like when I was around people, I just didn't have anything to say. It was like my thoughts weren't valid. I wasn't worthy of having opinions and of talking. So I just didn't really talk. I didn't really give input to things. And like thinking back on that time and how I felt about myself, my own self-worth and my own belief that I was like worthy of having something to say, as someone who literally could just sit and talk and talk and talk and talk forever. It really just highlights the value, because obviously, you know, middle school, teenage years, that's like a hard time. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that. But just knowing that like I've created a platform where we get to talk, we get to have these real conversations, and wherever the conversation goes, we get to have that. And just like what a gift to myself that is. But I also know what a gift to anyone tuning in. And you know, when something's said and it like sparks something like our conversation did for me today, it's like it's really cool just to get to have conversations, and you never know what's going to hit someone and be like, oh, that's a different way to think about that. And
Right.
just what power there is in conversation.
Yeah. And that connection too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So powerful. So
Yeah,
powerful.
it really is. I mean, I could just talk about that and what world-changing work it is to have conversations and to just normalize that process.
Yeah, absolutely. To talk out loud, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so powerful.
So I would love to kind of get a little bit into your story. Something I love learning about is just kind of the experience that moms go through from being in that role of mother. And for you, you know, you were a stay-at-home mom and decided to kind of come to a place of doing something more for yourself after being in that role
Mhm.
for a while. And so I would love to know what kind of brought you to this place of supporting mothers while also doing the mothering yourself.
Yeah, it was really hard to get to that place of
Mhm.
that low point, right? Because we all reach
Yeah.
that low point. And I think for me, there wasn't a moment, but I was just done feeling bad. I was like, I
Mhm.
just want to feel better. I'm just so ready to start feeling better. And I think I got caught in that pattern of wanting to believe that I was a good mom and not understanding that I could innately believe that without having to take all the actions to support it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got caught in taking all the actions. And so, since I wanted to believe that I was a good mom, because deep down I was worried that I was a bad mom, what resulted in that experience for me was constantly doing all the things all the time, which was super exhausting. So I even caught myself sometimes cleaning up at the end of the night before my husband got home. So kids were in bed, husband was getting home, and I found myself cleaning up because I was like, that's what a good wife does. That's what a good mom does. And it's such a trap because
Mhm.
then there will always be the things that a good mom does, the things that a good person does. And if you are not believing in yourself in that way, like I was exhausted by having to do all of the things all of the time. And every time I didn't, that huge wave of shame came over me. Like I'm a terrible mother. I messed it up. I can't be trusted. And it was just getting to that point of like, I'm done feeling this way. I'm just so done feeling this way. And realizing that I was ready to honestly just stop only mothering, which, you know, I'm not saying anything here, like not passing any judgment. That was my experience. I was
Mhm.
honestly ready to do something else other than just only being a stay-at-home mom because I was so in my story about that experience that I wasn't enjoying it. And so I went to, what else can I do to enjoy myself? And when I went back to coaching and started doing all this work around understanding how much our thoughts affect the results and the reality that we create in our lives, I worked through all of these things. And I realized, like, wow, I might just be a few steps ahead of someone, but that could just make all of the difference for these moms out there who can lean on someone saying, you know what I'm going through because you were there 3 years ago, not that long ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And you can help me get past it from an authentic and place of connection and support. And it's so powerful to have the opportunity to give the space for moms to just be, right? Just to, no judgment. I'm not trying to fix it, because I think that that's what ends up happening in a lot of our lives. Like, you go to a friend and maybe that friend will hear you, but then they'll try to give you advice, or they'll try to present something else to you in a way based on their experiences. And what can really change someone is having a safe space to be able to talk to someone and hear their own thoughts without any judgment. No one's going to try to change anything. You don't need to be fixed. And finding that for myself really was what just passioned me to be like, oh, I want to be able to do this for everything.
I
And
love
listen,
that.
there are still days where I still have hard days.
Yeah.
I still have bad moods. Like, it's not perfect and it's not going to be perfect, but I cannot discount how much better I feel than back in 2020. Like,
Yeah.
it is just night and day, and how much work I know that I still have to do, and looking at it from a place of like, oh, that's going to be fun. Like, I have so much more to do still, not, oh, I did all of this work and I'm still not good enough, and look at all the stuff that I still have to do. Right. But
yeah, I mean, there's that layer of acceptance and compassion for it not being perfect, that had you not done the work, you may not be able to have that compassion for yourself. And so how cool just to know that you can show up for other moms and say, yeah, that's all this stuff that we're working on is stuff that I continue to work on and will continue to work on, because that's what it's about. It's not about reaching this destination. It's like, no, it's about having compassion along the way and knowing that, like, you're not going to get it right 100% of the time, because that's not how it works.
It's not. And I think for me, what has been so mind blowing lately has been feeling like I regained my freedom. And I don't think that that's something that a lot of women even understand, that that's what's going on with them in their motherhood, is that they feel kind of trapped. Right. And so for me, feeling like I can be free to do anything, really anything, is just amazing. And I'm like, I would love to be able to show all the moms out there just how free they can truly be in their mom lives and beyond. It's good, right?
That. Yeah, I mean, it really is, like, the power of knowing that you have choice in your life, you have agency in your life, and it doesn't always mean that you're going to be able to make whatever choice you wish you could make or whatever, but it's knowing that, like, that you do have choice. Like, there's freedom in that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I love like just getting to hear the story of how, like, just that growth of getting to a place where you can talk about these things. And I think it's so inspiring. I always feel so inspired, and I know listeners as well. It's like, this is cool. Like, there's so much opportunity to learn and grow and just become more free versions of ourselves and continue that.
Yeah, it's all there for us. We just have to choose to see it or not.
Yeah.
That's the best part, which I love too, because it's like, it's actually really easy. It's not like you have to do all of this work. You just have to be open to seeing something different. And that's what I can help with, help you step out of that so you can see something else instead. It's great. I love
that. So something that I love getting into on the Worthy Mother podcast, because I think self-care and caring for ourselves is like a massive piece of the puzzle. And there's a lot of different interpretations of what that means. And so I love just asking our guests, how do you take care of yourself? And do you have any tips for moms to make sure that they are caring for themselves?
Yes, I do. I had mentioned before how asking myself what I want
Mhm.
is so simple and so effective in my own journey as a mother. And I always tell my clients that like self-care doesn't have to be the 3-hour lunch with your friends every single week. Like even having small moments can still count to fill your cup. And me personally, aside from asking myself consistently that question, I'm outside as much as I can be. Like outside in the sunshine, as soon as I can be outside, I will do everything outside. We'll eat outside, I will be on my laptop outside. Like living in California, I have that luxury and I'm super grateful for it. But for me, being outside is a true form of self care. And it brings me a level of peace and wonder that fills my cup consistently. And it's so easy. It's not the 3 times a week workout that you have to somehow fill into your schedule. Like, I understand that there are moments and there are times where that's just not an option for you.
Mhm.
And if it's not, that's okay. There's still other opportunities to do self care. And I like to say, like, fill your cup in a way that will get you through the day and doesn't require 3 hours of exercise, you know?
Yeah.
And what I like sharing with my clients is having them do brain breaks because it really is this moment of physical activity that your brain is focused on. So it's not thinking, it's not overthinking. And those are so cool because it's just 5 or 10 minutes a day, but it adds up. And, things like being outside, things like even laying down in bed and being immersed in the physical sensations of like your body relaxing in the bed, that's really key because we are constantly in this state of mental exhaustion because we're overthinking all the time. We're constantly, our brains are just going. And something like even washing dishes can be a brain break, can be a moment of self care if you allow it. If you turn up some music really loud and you just focus on washing dishes and you don't think about anything else, like stuff like that can really function as forms of self care and don't require, a lot of time. But I think one of the main things that I constantly stress to my clients about is the importance of doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because I think us as mothers, we're so dedicated to this role that dads too. Like it's a parental thing to immediately go to this place of the kid's the most important thing. And so when you can shift back and understand, like, I'm important too, and taking care of myself is actually better for my family. I love to have my clients do that work. Like, not only understanding that doing what I love to do helps give me more pleasure in my life and I will naturally feel better, even if nobody else wants to do it, but also doing the work to prove to yourself how much, like, what the benefits are when you take care of yourself. Like, say you have a self care plan, whatever that looks like, for a month. Every single week, write down what was different. Like, oh, I noticed I felt better in the afternoon when I'm normally tired. Or I didn't yell this time because I had gone and done something 5 minutes before for myself. You know, showing your brain that proof, because we all know self care is important. We all know that it's better for everybody else, but we don't believe it, right? Like we don't believe it inside. And when you do that exercise to prove it to your brain, to like see on the paper, like, wow, this is all the evidence of how this is really helpful for
Yeah.
me, then you don't necessarily fight it as much. There's not as much guilt there in taking care of yourself because you can prove it to yourself how good it is for everyone around you when you can take care of yourself too. And that I think is probably one of the biggest shifts that I've seen my clients take is showing how important it is to do things that you want to do just as a person, as a human being, and then doing the work to prove to yourself, like, how is the self-care actually helping? right?
Yeah. I love too, it's like giving yourself credit for it. It's like, look, I made this happen and this is the benefit to me, to my family, like, and just giving yourself that credit of like,
Right.
this is awesome. This is the like legitimate change that I'm making because I'm choosing myself. And it's
Right.
cool to bring that awareness right to like celebrating those
Yeah.
little teeny tiny wins that are huge in the long run.
Yeah, but you really do have to make the effort to train your brain,
Yeah.
because your brain's always going to be like, no,
Totally.
don't do
Yeah.
that. And so you really like, it's so important to do the work to train your brain the other way, right? Like,
Yeah.
let me show myself how important that self-care is, so it doesn't end up having to be, there's not that much guilt in it,
Yeah.
because so many moms do that. They understand. They're like, "Oh, I know it's important, but like, who's going to take care of the baby?" Right? Like,
Hmm.
so you decide always in favor of your kids instead of yourself. And it goes back to that, so many people talk about that idea of like putting the mask on, like
Yeah.
putting your own mask before helping others, like on the plane. Like, it's such a good example of how
Yeah.
important it is to take care of yourself first.
It really is. Yeah.
Because if you can't be there for your kids, then what are they going to, like, how is that helpful?
Like you can't,
You
it's
know,
not sustainable. You can't keep it up
it's
and
not sustainable.
it doesn't help anyone.
It
Totally agree
doesn't.
with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda, where can listeners find you? And is there anything that they should keep an eye out for when they go find you?
Well, the absolute best way to get in touch with
Yes.
me and to see what I'm about is to follow me on Instagram. And my handle for that is that mom life underscore coaching. And I'm on Facebook and TikTok and all of the socials. And you can also find me through my website, which is www.thatmomlifecoaching.com. But what I wanted to offer as a special for anybody who's going to be listening to your podcast is that if they message me referencing the Worthy Mother podcast, I would
Hmm.
be happy to offer them a free 1 hour session just to be able to really experience the power of coaching, because I feel like so
Yeah.
many moms out there have no idea how much it can help. And then you try it and you're like, wow, this is so amazing. Like, that is so helpful. Now I see what a difference having that awareness and having someone help me with these things can really, really be. So I
Oh, I
wanted to
love
offer that
that.
too.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And I will link all of this goodness in the show notes so that you can easily find Amanda and make sure to connect with her. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. This conversation,
Good.
I loved it. This is such a good one. I love that you are doing work that is so, I mean, I think it's really important work. It's changing the world for mothers and for everybody, because it really does start with, individuals, and making life just a little bit more compassionate for individuals can really have
Yeah.
a huge impact on the world.
Yes. So good talking to you today. Thanks so much for
Yes.
having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. We will be back next week with another episode of the Worthy Mother podcast. Remember, you are worthy, Mama.